And welcome back to our next edition of the CBB Review Studio podcast. I am Dan Siegel, and we are here with 25 mid-major conference previews in the next 25 minutes. We are going to attempt to do the impossible. I am joined by our CBB Review mid-major expert, Matt Waldman, and we're just going to jump right into it because, like I said, 25 previews, 25 minutes, not a lot of time, but we'll try to pace ourselves as best as possible. So let's dive right into it. We are going to go alphabetically here. So let's start with the America East, if that works for you, Matt. America East, Vermont has won the last 8 regular season titles and 4 of the last 6 in terms of the tournament. So they are really the juggernaut here. Do you expect them to be the America East representative once again?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how you pick against them. They are the class of the league and have been for such a long time. Maybe UMass Lowell is a team that could give them trouble, but the fact that they already swept them in the regular season, I just can't see how Vermont doesn't take this one.
Yeah, they're 24-6, 14-1 in conference. Not a particularly star-studded team, but just very well coached, led by John Becker. Moving on to, this is controversial calling them a mid-major conference, but we did replace the Mountain West with them in that category this year. We're going to talk about the American, and there's a few teams to look out for. Of course, the actual bracket has not been set up yet, but what are you looking at here?
I feel like the biggest question to answer is how much trust do you have in South Florida? We know about Florida Atlantic. We know even Memphis sits there. SMU has better metrics than the Bulls. So how much do you trust that league record of 1 loss? And they've proved it. You know, they've beaten Florida Atlantic. They've beaten these teams that are behind them, even though they considered better in the metrics. So, you know, what happens to the Bulls if they make it to the tournament final and they lose, right? And they haven't lost since then. And of course, you know, Florida Atlantic looks like an at-large team at this point in time, so you're looking at probably a 2-bid league maybe. And then what do you do with the Memphis and an SMU that has hung around the bubble, even though they don't get as much love? So I think that's the biggest question is what is this going to look like by the time we reach the end of this tournament?
Of course, one team you haven't mentioned, North Texas, also very much a threat. But yeah, South Florida probably the bid stealer to keep an eye out for because they've just been winning like crazy recently. 20 of their last 21. They shoot the lights out. They don't let their opponents shoot. That's always a good formula. Let's move on to the Atlantic 10, our next conference. Another one that we're probably going to give a little more love to than some of the other conferences. Also, potential 2-bid league, right? Dayton should be the auto bid if they do not win the conference tournament, which they have not done under Anthony Grant. But which bid stealer would you be looking at?
Truthfully, my eyes on VCU. You know, they made Dayton probably look the worst in league play of any team, holding them to 47 points in the one time they've played. Of course, that's the biggest one. Loyola Chicago jumps to the radar because of what they did against them just last week as well. But I'm really looking for VCU. It's a program that's got some history, and I agree with you. I think it's a 2-bid league because Dayton, I just don't – they've been upset too many times. I think they're a solid team, but I think that they're going to fall in that tournament at some point.
Yeah, a couple other teams to keep an eye on. Richmond, they actually are probably getting that number 1 seed in the tournament. They have experienced winning that conference tournament under Mooney. Of course, they have not been the best regular season team, but besides this year, but ETSU transfer Jordan King has been a superstar. Also given love to my UMass Minutemen. I feel like they're a dark horse because they've been on the bad end of some luck this year. They've shown they could beat anyone top to bottom in this conference. All right, ASUN. This is a conference with the 1 seed being Eastern Kentucky, the 2 seed being Stetson. It's likely a conference that's going to be a 16 seed. What do we look for in this tournament?
Truthfully, I think you mentioned probably the 2 highest probabilities right there. You know, EKU came in as the league favorite and then really looked bad during non-conference. Looked like a league favorite for most of the league season, but has kind of faltered recently. I think 2 of their 3 losses in league came in the last week or 2. But then Stetson at the same time, you think, hey, they're going to go out and maybe be a dark horse. They lose their last league game. So a lot of inconsistency across the league. So I think when you have a league like that, you've got to go with the teams at the top as the most likely outcome.
Yeah, Isaiah, was it Cozart? he's part of that dominant front court at EKU. So definitely a team to keep an eye on. Stetson did beat UCF in the regular season, worth noting. And that's all I've got for A-Sun. So we're keeping good pace right now. Fifth conference, the Big Sky, and number 1 seed Eastern Washington. They're just a lot of fun. They're incredibly efficient. They're a run and gun team. They could be a Big Sky winner and get to the dance, be a 14, 15 seed, and be pretty dangerous. And what are you looking for here?
Yeah, Eastern Washington definitely has had that, been up there at the top, but another team that's and similar, I think, to how they were last year or the year before, where they paced for a while, faltered down the stretch. So it'll be interesting to see how they get into Big Sky tournament play once it happens. Weber State, you got to watch them. Dylan Jones is there. They were the preseason top pick, and they have beaten Eastern Washington already this season. So I think if there's a team that can give a run for them, Weber State, and they'd be playing up to, I think, what their expectation was coming into the year.
Shout out Northern Colorado, too. They're fighting for a 2 seed. The bracket hasn't been set yet. I feel like it will be tonight, I think. But they lost Dalton Connect to Tennessee. That's what everybody remembers. But they improved to a potential 20-win team. Could we see the Dalton Connect Bowl in the first round of the NCAA tournament? That's actually very possible. So that's what I'll be rooting for. But that's all for the Big Sky. Next up, the Big South. This is conference number 6 of the night. Number 1, High Point is probably the team you're not going to want to see in March. They have 3 players over 15 points per game. They could score like crazy. But UNC Asheville shouldn't be slept on either, should they?
No, that is the biggest threat, and those games this year have been fantastic between those programs. High Point is a great story, certainly a program that hasn't had a lot of success in Division I, much less being in the Big South. But of course, you look at Asheville, and really it's a league. Even when you look at a team like Winthrop, maybe down the seeds a little bit, that could be there. They have, again, program pedigree in that league, but I think we'd be blessed to have High Point and Asheville in the Big South final. And either one of those teams will go on and represent the league well in March.
Drew Pember was a popular preseason pick Asheville was a popular preseason pick because of Drew Pember, I should say, one of the best mid-major players in college basketball. Next up, we got the Big West, which is one of the more underrated mid-major conferences, at least at the top, in my opinion. What are we looking for here?
Look, UC Irvine has been as consistent as possible out there. They're once again at the top, have been pushed a little bit. UC Davis took them out. I don't think Long Beach beat them, but Long Beach State has gotten some big wins in non-conference, so there's some potential there. The biggest shout out I have to give outside of UCI is UC San Diego. They're still in that transition period from D1, but they have beaten the Anteaters this year. They're making a run for the Big West regular season title, which is the best they can do. With league NCAA rules, they're not going to be able to play in the NCAA tournament regardless of what they do. So just a big shout out for them to grow in I think it's year 3, to pushing for a league title already.
Yeah, I absolutely everything you just said. UC Irvine, they're just straight up good. Like they're 79th on Torvik. They play lockdown defense, and they played a handful of Pac-12 Mountain West opponents in the non-conference slate and looked pretty decent in all of them. So definitely the storyline of the conference. Now in the CAA, we're headed back east, and this conference is really wide open in terms of who could win this tournament. There are 7 teams in that Torvik 100 to 170 range. So Charleston's probably the team to look at, but anybody else?
You said it. It's so deep. Hofstra's really come on strong of late. So I think that's a program. It's a team that you really need to keep an eye on. But you look at UNC Wilmington has had their moments at times. Drexel started the year really strong. Towson's kind of been in the mix. Like you said, all those teams bunched together. So I think any of those, I think 5 mentioned are certainly going to be there. Charleston playing well right now, but I think with the CAA and the way you look at the way these teams are structured and playing, it's going to come down to who gets hot at the right time out of that group.
Yeah, and Hofstra, I mean, they have 2 scorers in Darlinstone Dubar and Tyler Thomas, who average a combined 40 points per game. So if you want the star power in March, Hofstra is the team to look at. They've been playing their best ball lately, so that's good for them. Conference USA. This is a Louisiana Tech league this year. They're the clear team to beat. They have the best 2-point defense in the country, but Liberty, they've had a disappointing year. You still cannot count them out, in my opinion.
No, the Flames are going to be there, and certainly they're one of the programs dealing with that step up in competition. I look at Florida Atlantic as another example, a good team that's having to adjust to a new league. So I think Western Kentucky is also one to keep an eye on. And then can't forget Sam Houston State. They're pushing Louisiana Tech all season long. Maybe not as strong in the metrics as Louisiana Tech has looked, but you can't discredit the Bearcats, who've already beaten the Bulldogs once. We get that 1-4 rematch coming up here shortly in the regular season. So I think the Bearcats, you got to keep an eye on them too.
All right, and then moving on to the Horizon League. This is another wide open league. Wright State is just a fun metrics team. They have the biggest offense defense splits in the country. They have the 32nd offense and the 339th defense per Torvik. Oakland is the number 1 seed in this conference tournament, looking for their first tournament appearance since 2011. Take us away, Matt.
Yeah, Oakland has come on strong. They started strong, had a little bit of a lapse, and now have rebounded from that. Green Bay would be a great story. They were really playing well and kind of faltered down the stretch to lose out on that 1 seed potential. But the team I'm looking for at the most is Youngstown State. They've been there the last couple of years, and just for whatever reason, they dropped that Horizon League tournament game that you don't want to see happen. A program that's never been and played in March would be a fantastic story. And I think they'd be a little bit dangerous as well.
And then we've got the Ivy League. This has gotten, rightfully so, a lot of attention, even in the regular season throughout March, throughout college basketball enthusiasts. It's just a genuinely quality league. Unfortunately, only 4 teams qualify, so we will not see superstar freshman for Harvard, Malik Mack. But Princeton, Yale, and Cornell all have 20-plus wins. So what are we making of this?
Yeah, it's a shame that it's looking like a one-bid league, even though the metrics like Princeton and even Cornell and Yale have held strong throughout the year. So either one of those 3 teams is going to be probably heavily favored to win a first-round game by people making those picks in your bracket pools. I still think Princeton looks like the best team of the 3, but Cornell, Yale, you really can't go wrong with any one of them, and that should be a really fun, even though it's 4 teams, should be a really fun 2 days of basketball.
I think everybody, after what Princeton did last year especially, will be picking that trendy 12 over a 5 Ivy League upset, or maybe it's a 13 over a 4. So that'll be something to monitor. Now we're going to move on to the 2 MACs. So first the MAAC, and life after Rick Pitino has not treated Iona well so far. They're just 9-9 in league play. It's Quinnipiac who earns the 1 seed. They are looking for their first tournament appearance ever, and Fairfield, who's the number 2 seed, is looking for their first appearance since 1997. So it's a little bit of a different dynamic in this league this year.
Yeah, and props to the state of Connecticut. UConn gets a lot of love, but there's the 1 and 2 seeds out of this league as well, and they just played each other. Fairfield came out on top, then faltered right away to give the 1 seed back to Quinnipiac. So you have a really great race going on there. But one thing I remember historically, this is a crazier league tournament. Always one of those lower seeds seems to come out of nowhere. I look for Rider. Rider was favored a lot higher than they've been played, I should say, throughout the season. And so if there's a lower seed that might make a run, I could see Rider being that team.
And then we've got the MAC with 1A, and this is the newest, starting in 2025, where my UMass Minutemen will be. So I'll be monitoring this a lot. Not a good year overall for this conference. Obviously a step down basketball wise from the Atlantic 10. And we thought Kent State and Toledo would be 2 of the teams to beat this year. Neither have been as good as maybe we would have wanted. The Rockets did manage to put together a 12-4 conference slate. Dante Maddox is still awesome. And outside of that, Toledo is one of those high octane teams that would be a tough matchup in the dance, but still it's number 1 Akron, led by their 5th-year senior, Enrique Freeman.
Yeah, it's Akron's to lose. And like you said, the league has not been as strong as we're used to this year. And it's because of teams like Kent State and Toledo maybe not looking the way we're used to. And even Akron has not looked as formidable of late. Another top seed that maybe the length of a conference season wears you down as you get towards the end. So I still think it comes into Akron and maybe Toledo. But I don't think they're going to face much competition getting to that championship point.
And then we've got the MEAC, which is probably one of the worst leagues in the country. It's looking like Norfolk State is the team to beat. They're looking to represent the MEAC for the 3rd time in 4 years. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's theirs to lose, as you mentioned. Every time it looks like they're kind of breaking away from the rest of the team league, though, they fall like they lost to Delaware State this past weekend, which DSU is not a bad team for MEAC purposes, but you wait for them to break away. So if there's anybody, North Carolina Central knows how to win. They've been there before, and really South Carolina State has surprised a lot of people. So if there's two teams that might push them, there they are.
Missouri Valley is coming up next, and there are just some fun teams in this conference. They likely will just get that one auto bid, but Indiana State does have a tiny, tiny chance at getting the at-large. That's a really fun team. Incredible spacing. I really want the rest of the world to find out about them in March, especially because of the portion of the college basketball world that has already fallen in love with Ravi Avila. Drake and Bradley are also in the top 60 in the metrics, so they could be pesky. Belmont has been one of the hottest teams in America. They've won 7 of their last 8. They shoot the lights out. They've got 3 scorers at 17-plus points per game. I mean, there's just so many teams in this Missouri Valley. What will you be watching?
Yeah, I think that the at-large watch definitely has to be there. And again, it's kind of similar to like the AAC from earlier. What happens if Indiana State gets to the championship game and loses? They have the best metrics. So I think, Sycamores and Bulldogs out of Drake would be the dream tournament title game. Like you mentioned, Bradley has looked really well as of other kind of middle of the pack teams. I think someone like Southern Illinois is someone to watch as well. So a really fun tournament always is, and it's a treat that it's one of the first weekend tournaments. So you kind of get a taste of March out of that league a lot of the years they play. So I still think it comes down to Indiana State and Drake. We've seen both of those teams at times have a bad game. And of course, tournament time is not when you want to find you in that situation. So fun league to watch.
And then we continue cruising along. I believe we're at a pretty decent pace here, maybe a minute or so behind. We got the NEC up next. This is known as pretty likely the worst Division I conference, but they also had Fairleigh Dickinson last year. Fairleigh Dickinson is 9-7. Merrimack is the team to beat. This is their first year of eligibility. Most people forget they were actually supposed to be the representative of the NEC last year, but were not eligible due to their transition into Division I. They don't score a lot, but they defend at a high level. Central Connecticut State also 13-3.
It's Merrimack. Merrimack, send them in. Finally, this will be their third regular
Yeah.
season title in 5 years. Put them in. Let's get them in there.
I'm hoping for it. Ohio Valley up next, and Morehead State is a team a lot of people have liked. They're pretty physical. They've got Riley Minix, who's a 20-10 machine. He could also shoot the rock. Keep an eye out, maybe Little Rock, who they've won their last 9 en route to a 20-win season. And they're also, fun fact, one of the many double-digit seeds to have beaten Purdue in the last decade. So Morehead State and Little Rock is who I have my eye on. But what about you?
Yeah, I mean, those are great picks. Also, keep an eye on UT Martin. Believe it or not, there was a 3-way tie at the top, and UT Martin Little Rock captured the top 2 seeds, which gets you a bye to the semifinals. So maybe that's a disadvantage Morehead State may have, even if they're the better team on paper. So, whatever team comes out of here, low seed, but I think Morehead State gives the league the best chance to look good in March.
Patriot League, we've got Colgate. They've won the last 3 titles. They're favored to win a 4th straight. They're at 22-9, and American is the only other team with a winning record in that conference. They're 16-15. So it's really Colgate's league, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Colgate. They keep doing what they do. American did win at Colgate. That's the one thing they have in their bag to take, because the league tournament is played on home courts, but it's Colgate's.
Matt Langle actually was on our pod, so be sure to check that out. He was on CB Review courtside, so with Matt Majinski. Check that one out. Next up, we've got the SoCon, and there's lots of capable teams in here. There's Samford. They're the best at 26-5. They're the 4th best effective field goal percentage team in the country, but also not a bad defensive bunch either. And 2 of their losses came in the first 2 games of the season, one of them being Purdue. So just a team that's playing really good ball. But they're not perfect. They got caught 3 times in conference play. There's other 20-win teams, including Western Carolina, UNC Greensboro, Chattanooga, and even the team Samford lost to, Furman, Mercer. They're middle of the tier conference foes. So a lot of capable teams in the SoCon, isn't there?
There are, and this is my home league as a Wofford alum. You left out the other team that beat them this year. That is Wofford Terriers just last week. Not, but it's really going to come down to, can they survive? This is a tournament that will test you year in and year out, no matter how good you are or how good the league or the nation sees you. So Sanford, if they get it and they win it, they will have earned it, because Greensboro, Chattanooga play tough. Furman has had a lot of injuries, which is why they're kind of in the position they are. So this is always a fun tournament. I want to say Sanford because they're a great story, but I'm really keeping an eye on Greensboro and Chattanooga right behind them.
All right. And then the Southland up next. This is McNeese State. They're the teams beat with just 3 losses to date. None of them at home, and home is where this tournament will be taking place. But Texas A&M Corpus Christi was the winner of the conference last year. They will be taking on the 2 seed.
Yeah, I still think this is, again, McNeese's to lose. They have one slip up this year. Otherwise, they have kind of blown through the league. I think with any conference tournament, they'll get tested. Corpus Christi is the biggest threat, but it's the Cowboys, and one team that really I think should be a more trendy upset pick than maybe they will be come Selection Sunday.
We've got the SWAC, which is also one of the worst leagues in college basketball. Texas Southern, they're like that meme for being that first 4 team every year and then losing. But we're also looking at Southern. We're looking at Grambling State. They're the number 1 seed. Who do you like?
Yeah, when in doubt, this league has changed so many times in terms of league leaders this year. It's almost every night, that they play. So I think Texas Southern, it's got to be the team. Certainly Southern and Grambling are capable. They've proved that, but I think Texas Southern always finds a way when it comes time for the tournament.
Moving on to the Summit League. And this is a new looking conference dynamic because it's not Oral Roberts. It's not North Dakota State at the top. Those teams have had tough seasons. Instead, we're looking at the St. Thomas's, the South Dakota State. South Dakota State did win it in 22, so maybe that's not too new. But UMKC, South Dakota State, St. Thomas, in my opinion, is probably the most dangerous just as a product of the experience they have. But we might get a new champion out of the Summit League this year.
Yeah, and if St. Thomas makes that run, then congratulations to the conference championship loser, because fortunately the Tommies is another transition team. They've been a great story to watch. Certainly South Dakota State, I think, not as strong as they've been in recent memory, but they did win the league regular season title. And I agree. I kind of look for Kansas City as that sneaky team that might make a run. And again, another program that hasn't had historic success at this level, so it'd be great to see.
And then we got the Sun Belt. We got 3 more, so moving on at a good pace. A 2-bid Sun Belt is still possible. James Madison sits at 28-3, and with 4 losses, they could be an at-large, not a definite, but could be. And then there's App State, who also is only at 5 losses. They swept JMU in the regular season, and they're one of the better defenses in the country. There are a few other top 150 teams. Who are you keeping an eye out for, and who do you like in the Sun Belt?
It's between those two, and as much as I'd love a 2-bid league from there, I think it's 1 bid no matter who gets it. I know James Madison had that big win early on against Michigan State, but I think App State's the more dangerous team. They have a win over Auburn themselves, and Auburn has consistently stayed within that top 20 throughout the year once they got into the rankings. So to me, the best thing about this league, and this is my big call, one of those teams, whoever it is, if they get in, they're going to the Sweet 16. That's how good these
love that. I'll mark that one down. Next up, the WCC, second to last one. This is my favorite conference tournament format. Very controversial, but I like how they have that single, double, and triple bye. So it's basically shaped like a little ladder on its side. Gonzaga and St. Mary's, the rematch of those 2 teams, is the most likely result because they just need to win 1 game to get to that conference tournament. But both should be at largest. So if you're a WCC fan and you're not of one of those teams, it's probably San Francisco looking at the number 3 spot that you would hope could be dangerous. Of course, they have to win an extra game. But the top is a little weaker than most years in the WCC. So do they have a shot?
Yeah, no, I think it's those 2 teams, the Gales and the Bulldogs. I think Santa Clara might even be more of a threat than San Francisco, but unfortunately, the way the bracket shaped out, they don't get Gonzaga in that semifinal round. If they make it, they'd have St. Mary's, and they're not getting past the Gales.
Okay. We're going to finish off with the WAC. And we thought Grand Canyon could get that large, but now they lost a few games. They're sitting at 26-4. I think the hope is for them to win, but there are plenty of teams that could upset them. Unfortunately, my favorite is Tarleton State, and I believe they're also still in the transition period. But I really love the way they play. They're so multiple scheme wise and stuff. But who do you like?
Yeah, I think Tarleton is the biggest threat. You've nailed that. One team that I feel like has played well recently is UT Arlington. So that's maybe more of a sleeper. And then even though Stephen F. Austin hasn't looked good of late, and they did just lose to Grand Canyon, they pushed them early on. And then Seattle. Seattle is one of the other teams that has beaten Grand Canyon this year and has had some success of late. So I think it's Grand Canyon's to lose. But as you mentioned, it only takes one loss, and unfortunately those at-large bid hopes are about gone.
All right, and that will do it for our conference tournament mid-major previews. Thank you so much for listening. That has been 25 tournament previews in just about 25 minutes. Glad I could have finally gotten you on, Matt Waldman, to preview some mid-major stuff. Thank you for sharing your expertise. Be sure to follow us on the socials at the bottom. But once again, just thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and take care.